Good Monday morning, Monday afternoon, I should say. Welcome to a football show. His name is Zach. My name is Braden. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group. We are less than 24 hours away from embarking on a journey to Kentucky to consume bourbon, Zach. And I am partially excited and partially terrified all at the same time.
You don't think you're ready for it, so we'll see. But I don't know if you can be strictly, ready for a bourbon testing / epic, I guess, journey up to the bourbon trail. But at least you don't have to drive, so that's a big thing.
No. And it's exactly Sinker's plan, right? They will deliver the booze directly to your house. If you just search Sinkers on Uber Eats, that's what they'll do for you, Zach.
Yeah, they'll drive so you could drink.
There you have it. And that's what's going to happen tomorrow. And we'll give you some more details on that plan and what exactly I am terrified about. So we're also going to talk about DeAndre Hopkins, of course, today. Nashville and the Titans rolling out the red carpet for the free agent wide receiver. Are they negotiating against themselves? We will discuss. I'll ask Zach and get his answer on that. Are we concerned about all of the reports for, I guess, a while now about his practicing? I have a very clear answer on that. And then we're going to spend the vast majority of the show today discussing Titans that haven't been discussed, which is forgotten players that are critical to this team. Not that anyone's actually forgotten, Zach. All these players, every fan knows all these names.
Kind of like under the radar, which Stoney has his own list over at stackinginbox.com this morning. But it was something that I got inspired or thinking about last week. And then just so happens, Stoney, I guess, was thinking about the same thing. It's kind of scary that sometimes we are on the same wavelength, even if we do not talk.
Yep, that is clear. StackingTheInbox.com. Subscribe right now, of course, for all the best content for your Tennessee Titans in the written form from Zach and Co. Over there, of course. And we told you about Sinkers, Kingston Group, BuildKG.com. No construction is happening at my house right now because you want to know why? Because one of my guys used to be at the Kingston Group, did a small project at our house, it built an entirely new wall and new door frame in a week for us.
Wow.
And did the whole thing in a week. He managed all the crews, and this is a guy who worked on our carport for us when we had the Kingston Group working on our house. No noises today on the show. It'll be clean and clear. No noises today because they finished their work so freaking fast that it's already done, basically. Now I'm waiting for a painter now to come finish the job. Also, my guy, Austin, in charge of all that, too. I don't have to worry about any of it. And the wife is very, very happy, Zach. So Kingston Group.
That's what matters most.
The boss is very happy. So Kingston Group, BuildKG.com. Again, even if they cannot help you with what you are working on, they will help you with what you're working on. That's all you need to know. So go check that out. We'll talk about sort of under the radar, forgotten Titans players that are the most important for this team. Just make sure we cover all of our bases here on the show as we want to do. So that'll be the main part of this. I will ask you about the practice thing with DeAndre Hopkins, and then we'll try to explain what the hell is actually going to happen tomorrow on this Bourbon Trail journey fiasco to Mecca of the brown water. But let's start with the red carpet, my man. The red carpet, it started with, I guess, a pretty fancy ride with some custom TV screens, and he's posting on Instagram. He's riding through town in a fancy rig, gets downtown, then he posts again, and he's at CMA Fest, and I guess he's watching Tim McGraw, I suppose. I don't know. I just know it rained a lot on Sunday night, so I'm glad I wasn't there. Otherwise, the Titans clearly want this player on their team. There is nobody else in the NFL that has even tried to come as close as the Titans are, at least from an effort standpoint. It may not mean anything, Zach, from a number standpoint, but from a, we are going to outwardly show you how much we love you. Show me the love. No one has done it more for DeAndre Hopkins than the Tennessee Titans.
But did they show it the right way? Is taking DeAndre Hopkins to CMA Fest the smart move? Because first off, you're showing a Tennessee Titans stadium at over maximum capacity, which he will never see in his football playing career. So you already have given him lofty expectations of how Nashville fills out a stadium that will never be filled out by Nashvillians.
At least he knows this, though. He's played here every year, almost every year of his career. So
but it's been a while. I mean, he kind of played, the Marcus years were kind of pretty good, and then the beginning of the Tannehill years, but it's dropped off a little bit.
That's true.
And then is that the best time to show someone from out of town what Nashville consists of, because that is the epitome of all the worst things about Nashville in one place. An outdoor concert that just got done raining, so you got shitty ass weather. You got the worst people coming into CMA Fest drunk, and they're smelly. They've been outside all day. They're rude, and it's just a bunch of people listening to bad music. Like, I am sorry, country music has no place in my heart. There's
Well,
country music that I can like. I get that it's Tim McGraw, but I don't know. I feel like that is the worst place you can take someone out of town outside of like literally Broadway, because you're having to fight the traffic, because I'm sure there's no police escort, right? Like, so you have to fight the traffic to get there. It's a mess. It's a disaster. I just don't think that was the right move.
So it's interesting you say this. I think what's fascinating is their country music, as long as it's not like mainstream Music Row country music, which I would not call country music, I would call that pop. To be honest with you, I like all the outlaw stuff. So it's funny that you say that. I think DeAndre Hopkins is not from here though, and Nashvillians.
But does he even like country music?
Well,
like,
but
that's also the other thing, right?
Hey, he's dropping Chris Stapleton on his Instagram feed, so maybe he does.
Okay, well, there you go.
Because that's real country music, not like Chris Stapleton is the guy in between. Chris Stapleton, Maren Morris, Casey Musgraves, probably those are like the three people that like straddle like the outlaw country with the people that I listen to, which is Jason Isbell's brand new record, by the way, is phenomenal. Check like Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, Margot Price. Dave Cobb produces most of them. Brent Cobb's an amazing artist. Like guys men and women that I love. There's only a couple of them that straddle the fence that can go into the mainstream, and Stapleton's one of them. I to your point though, we are Nashvillians, so we are snobs. We hate CMA Fest. I have very like angsty feelings towards the people that are there and the event and the whole deal. But like the average human being who does not live in and around the greater Nashville area is still obsessed with like the big party. So I think showing him the big party is good. To your point about him personally, though, I think what's really interesting is he is sort of a known, I don't want to say like fashionista, but like he's really big into the fashion world, like off the field. So I am assuming that the American flag bandana / bikini up the crack of some girl's ass is probably not the fashion sense that he searches for when he is out, like very high level stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Like European, like
I mean, like let's be honest. Let's just
stuff.
call it what it is. CMA Fest is not the place you go to see well-groomed, well-dressed people.
Yeah. That's basically what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I guess you're right. Both. It's about the party. It's about the atmosphere. But that's also like not during football season. Does that? I guess as a player, if I was coming to the Tennessee Titans, do I want to go and watch? Like personally, did they even ask him? Like, do you want to go to CMA Fest? Because if I was a player and I am the same personality but in a more athletic body that's talented for football, and they took me to CMA Fest, I'd be like, do we have to go? That'd be the first words out of my mouth. Can we go anywhere else? I do not want to go to CMA Fest. And that's without like that's just how I've always been. I am not an outdoor concert guy necessarily. It has to be really special for me to want to go to outdoor concert. But I've never been a country guy after like Garth Brooks and album like once he transitioned to Chris Gaines, I think I was out on country music.
Well, again, I think there's real country, which in the 60s would be like Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings, like when Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley were riding around in a bus in Texas, like that kind of country music. And then there's like Main Street, Bakersfield, even in some of that. And then there's like mainstream country, which again is like bedazzled jeans and like no one writes their own songs. Like that's pop to me. That's not even country. So I think I love that debate. We can have that all day and I will win, not with you, but with anybody on what's real country. So, but here's the other thing. He is a Southern dude, man. Like, let's just be clear. Like he might be a fashionista who is in a very, very elite tax bracket, but he cares about the team most importantly, a strong defense, a good quarterback, a good offense. Like he cares about the coach. He wants to win football games. That's what matters more than all of this, and mostly the contract. Let's be clear. But he is from the Southeast. He is from South Carolina. He played football at Clemson. He played a bunch of years in damn Texas. Like, it's not like this guy has spent his entire life in Seattle.
Right.
You know, like, he's been around the South. And if you're around the South for this long in most of his life, he probably has an opinion or knowledge or understands that, you know, whatever. And again, I would agree, if you're trying to court DeAndre Hopkins or anyone, this probably goes to people who, I assume this still applies to dating. I have not dated in a while. I'm not sure how I would do currently if I had to do it again. But I'm assuming you don't take your date to a place they don't want to go.
Right.
That seems like dating 101 to me.
I do like that they, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but in the video of him riding the bus, they went ahead and jersey shopped him into a Titans jersey. I thought that was pretty funny. Should have been an Oilers jersey, though. Do not know why. He should have been greeted with Oiler jersey, hats, jackets, T-shirts, tennis shoes. I don't know what all they got. Pajama bottoms. Everything should have been Tennessee. The Houston Oilers logo on them. And remind him that he gets to fuck over the franchise that fucked him over. And by wearing the jersey that they think they own the rights to, which is erroneous, they do not have the rights to those.
They do not.
And it should have been like nothing Tennessee Titans, should have all been Houston Oilers, just because I think that there's a part of the competitive spirit in players that truly would have appreciated it. And we already know that he really, like a lot of the Houston players, including J.J. Watt, really want the Houston Oilers stuff. And to be able to get something that you kind of wanted a few years ago when you were playing for the Texans, to get back at your own team twice a year, and you're going to be able to wear it the first year that comes out against the Houston Texans, more than likely, would be huge. Like, to me, that would be so huge as a competitor and as, I guess, a millennial or Gen XZ, whatever fucking generation we're all in, or he's in, or whatever, to be able just to troll someone. Like, that's some respect.
So I think, could it have been like next level trolling, like that second tier? Yes. Do I think that they put that in the pitch and when they talked about it?
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Absolutely, because it's, frankly, with all due respect to the Flaming Thumbtack, the Oilers' logos, gear, and color is among the best in the NFL. Full stop. No debate. Among the best in the NFL. The Titans gear, while significantly improved on the previous iteration of it, is still not one of the best looking uniforms, although I do love the dark blue helmets, and I think they've improved it with that big retro change they did a couple of years ago. Jason makes a point here. I think we're both kind of saying this. Sounds like a business thing to do. I once had to take a publisher to a Preds game. I'm positive that they did not give a shit about hockey. I think that is the case. You are showing them a good time, and in the process of, like, every now and then touching on business, right? You're like, oh, what do you think about 3 years with like a void year? Oh, look, Tim McGraw. There he is.
Well, he doesn't have to worry about void years. You know,
that's true. It's very much like doing a deal on the golf course.
I know, but is that the place you want to do a deal with all the woo girls and the music and, you know? I mean, let's be honest, the Titan suites are
no, I know. I've been in them.
They're not that fancy.
No, I think it was more like, oh, CMA Fest happened to be going on this weekend. Yeah. He happened to be taking his visits this weekend. Oh, let's roll out the red carpet. Let's do it the right way. Show him what we can. Show him that Nashville can throw a big party and that lots of people also want to be here too. I think it's just subliminal, kind of like, it's like Jason said. I think it's just business.
I just don't think it would work for me. I'd be like, if you want to discuss business, we gotta get out of here.
What are you gonna take him to, like a hip and trendy bar in like WeHo and just party down there? Like,
I don't even know where fucking WeHo's at. Which part of Nashville's calling themselves WeHo?
Wedgwood, Houston. That is.
Hey, we just call it Wedgwood. I mean, I don't know why they gotta make it so fancy. No, I would just take him to like a really nice steakhouse or a really nice private dinner. And we go to a
Stoney,
bar.
Shut up, Stoney.
He's one Dave and Buster's. I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot better, nicer places that you can discuss business and sort of still have fun. I don't know. It just seems.
Yeah, I agree.
It just seems forced, I guess.
Maybe it was, but if you had a great time, it was the exact right choice. By the way, David, all I think about at Dave and Buster's is the last season of Barry. on HBO where the Chechens gangsters are trying to conduct real business at a Dave and Buster's. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Anyway, if you've seen it, you know. What do you think the chance the Titans sign him, and this will this be like Clowney taking it until training camp? So AVing, that is the ultimate question: is do you think they actually have right now? I would say they have the best chance of anybody if the numbers are right, because
I think it's very clear that they have the best chances.
Because they are clearly the most interested, and he's taken a visit here. He hasn't really done that with anybody else. The Patriots thing is kind of seems like it's on and off and cold and hot. It's not Cleveland. It's probably not Buffalo. It's probably not Kansas City. So I think there is a good chance if they want to pony up the right amount of money.
I feel like at this stage, while we're talking about favorites and traveling and all this stuff, if there was a third team that was interested, we would have heard about it by now.
I think so.
Because you had the Titans come out, and then you had the Patriots come out, like 2 hours later, 3 hours later, the Patriots said that they were going to bring him in for a visit. Normally, if by then, someone else, if they felt that they were really interested in DeAndre Hopkins, would have thrown their hat in the ring, and nobody has. Kind of like with Derek Carr, right? It was the Saints and the Jets. That was it. And we knew about it. Nobody else got in on it. Nobody else really kicked the can or poked around or anything. It was them two. And it seems like it's that way for this thing. And it kind of is seeming like Bill Belichick, according to his comments, that the DeAndre Hopkins camp is a little aloof.
Well, let me ask you this, because I don't want this to go out of date if he like signs on Monday evening or whatever. I just want to know, like, is there a number? Is there anything that if you saw the news break, Titans have signed DeAndre Hopkins, and then as we get the details, which always takes a couple of days, right, to come out, when we get the details, that your reaction would be like, I'm not sure about this, because this kind of leads us into our next topic, which and AVing asked about, will this be like Clowney? It takes till training camp. We also have a Julio Jones comparison to make as well with this. He was constantly injured, different players, which we've done on the show, but they went and Clowney was the big fish, and then it was Julio Jones was the big fish. This certainly, you know, from a cost standpoint, is there anything that could come out after the news breaks that the Titans have signed and that you'd be like, no, I don't think we should have done that?
No, because the problem is that after the news, it would have to be the actual details of the contract for me. I mean, me personally, because that's what you're asking, right? I mean, you're asking for my opinion. I'm a wait and see guy. Like it could be like if they said it was a 1-year deal and it was like $19.4 million, I'd be pretty skeptical, because I'm like, you might as well just trade it for him at that point, because you got really nothing. But like if they said, well, the Tennessee Titans have signed DeAndre Hopkins to a 1-year deal worth up to such and such number, that doesn't really do it for me anymore. I've gotten to a point where I've written about this stuff for 3 years now, contract situations, free agency, trying to educate people, and I break down the anatomy of a tweet. And part of that is up to doesn't really mean shit until you get the numbers in SpoTrack or in the overthecap.com. None of this stuff really matters. That's when you can make the judgment. Now, I didn't make a judgment on Harold Landry because I knew that he was going to be overpaid, and he is overpaid. I don't care what anybody says or tries to argue. He is technically overpaid, but sometimes you have to overpay. And what I say in the article about Harold Landry back when all this was going down is that sometimes you have to overpay good players. But I don't think you have to overpay DeAndre Hopkins, because it's a totally different situation in that regard.
And then you see if it works. I mean, I think you kind of said the same thing about Bud Dupree when he signed the contract initially. It's like, oh, this guy is a force multiplier. If you get this, then it's he's good, but it's an overpay. But you had to overpay to get him. Turns out the injuries and he never really returned to that player, and that's just how you study things after they've happened, right? Hindsight's 20/20. I do think
we talked about the Titans may have to overpay because they've created this massive void at wide receiver. There is a void at wide receiver.
Yes.
That if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't for whatever reason does not sign here, that nobody else is going to be able to fill that void by their lonesome. You're going to have to do wide receiver by committee, pretty much.
Here's the other thing about them. They're not negotiating against themselves, but it's starting to feel like there is some of that. Enrique says,
it feels that they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Enrique says, do you think the longer he waits, the cheaper it would be for the Titans? And certainly that, as long as he's like tested every single other all 31 waters, and the only water he really loves is in Tennessee, then the Tennessee is kind of negotiating against itself to some degree. Doesn't mean he's not going to get a good contract, but it means that there it could be reasonable. And the longer this goes, I would assume the better the Titans are, because that means the fewer options Hopkins has, I think, in theory. But again, that's just us here, which leads us to sort of this practice thing about him. And I have one very specific take about the quote unquote bad practice habits. The reports are, of course, out of Arizona that DeAndre Hopkins doesn't love practice. I'm not sure what human being has ever loved practice, just in general, across any sport. But here's I want to see what you think about this, but here's how I would look at it if I'm trying to analyze in a nuanced and thoughtful way this particular issue. Because Julio Jones didn't practice at all. I mean, some of that was injury. Some of that was he just was kind of off on the other field a lot of times. Clowney was kind of like that, even as a recruit coming out of high school, even as a player at South Carolina. Like, it's kind of like, oh, he's a gamer. He doesn't love the game all that much. I don't think there's any question about how much DeAndre Hopkins loves the game. But B, I don't think it's a problem until it's a problem, if that makes sense. I think you have to give him the chance to show Mike Vrabel what he is on a practice field and as a teammate before we say that it's a problem. Does that make sense? Like, I need to see Vrabel and Hopkins interacting and see that, like, it doesn't work before I'm even willing to think that it's a problem, because if he goes out there and plays on Sundays, I'm not sure how much Mike Vrabel cares.
Well, it's not because he doesn't like practice, because he's on record, literally on record, saying, because this was back in 2021, he goes, I like grinding. Okay, pause. I love practice, he said. I think a big misconception about somebody like me is just he doesn't like practicing. He calls himself a dog. He goes, I have what is called a tightrope in my ankle, and a lot of players don't go out and perform very well after that, he said. I've had it in there for 3 years. So this is back in 2021. So he's had it for 3 years prior to 2021. And that's for those that don't know, it's a type of ankle surgery that uses a cord instead of a screw to mobilize the ankle. It allows more natural motion. And basically, he gets to rest, and he takes rest days because he's managing his ankle load. He goes, if I can go out there and compete every practice, we go full pads, I'm the guy to be the advocate for that. For me, I just like playing football. I like competing. It's not a competitive issue. It's not a laziness issue. It's not a diva issue. It's a smart management of prolonging one's career issue, which is totally different than Julio Jones, by the way.
Or Jadeveon Clowney, even more different than Jadeveon Clowney. Aving makes a great point here. Vrabel knows him very well. I mean, that's absolutely true. Like, there's no reason. Tim Kelly, like, for Christ's sake, like, all these guys,
Charles London, Pat O'Hara, all these guys know him.
Like, they know exactly what he is. So to me, it's like not an issue until I hear like Mike Vrabel 3 times in a row, 3 weeks in a row saying, oh, well, we need some 8-4 players at wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like, unless he says one of those cheeky kind of Mike Vrabel things at a press conference where he's alluding to a guy maybe not being around as much as he needs to be, which he's done very clearly in the last couple of years. I just don't like, to me, it's one of those where it's like, it's not an issue until it's an issue. And right now, to me, it's not an issue. I also think at 31, you earn the right to sort of, especially in this situation where they're clearly courting you. Like, I assume that if they sign him, everyone's going into the situation with eyes wide open.
Well, you know, Danico Autry is famous for skipping a lot of practices, and not really skipping, it's the wrong word, but he's not there taking full advantage of full practice. He's not a full participant a lot of times, which is fine. He's older than DeAndre Hopkins, and he's earned it. I am toying around with the idea of right now that Danico Autry, to make room for DeAndre Hopkins, I think people need to talk about Danico Autry extension. Like, it frees up $4 million that can go towards the Tennessee Titans salary cap. And that seems like a really smart, prudent move to just add one more year to Danico Autry's contract, which is a guy that is still playing at a high level despite not practicing. Yeah, for now. And then look, if 1 year he can't do it, if he sucks this year for whatever reason, you can cut bait. It's not like it's the end of the world that you cut bait with him next year. But
You have enough cap space to make.
Yes, you have
make
enough
these
cap
moves.
space.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's so many different moves that the team can make to make room for DeAndre Hopkins. That's not the big issue. This idea, I'm sorry, and Tim, maybe we'll talk about, I'll beat it into Tim's head tomorrow on the Bourbon Trail.
Not literally.
Because I wish I could be, maybe literally, we don't know what's going to happen when we get bourbon in us. Listen, I wish I could be excited about the chance he comes here, but being burned by Julio and Clowney has soured me on big name signings. And I understand that. But you got to look. I wish Titans fans, and maybe this is not just Titans fan specific, I wish everybody would treat every situation in a vacuum. It's very easy and convenient to compare DeAndre Hopkins to Julio Jones, Andre Johnson, all these guys. But in reality, he is none of those guys. He's not Jadeveon Clowney, even though they're both former Texans and they're both in the middle of the offseason looking for a home and free agent being courted. There's similar situations or similarities, but the players themselves are just totally different. And DeAndre Hopkins is still a plus player on the borderline of the right side of his career.
I think he's on the line.
Yeah, he's right there. I mean,
Yeah.
Now, can he prove us wrong and change aspects of his game or adjust or be something in this offense that kind of prolongs his career? Sure. But if you're talking about, you got to look at what is best for the Tennessee Titans team in 2023 is signing DeAndre Hopkins. And to say you can't sign DeAndre Hopkins this is not what Tim is saying, but this is what other people have said. You can't sign DeAndre Hopkins because he hates practice. You can't sign DeAndre Hopkins because look at what happened to Julio Jones. Well, there's no trade compensation. We don't know what the compensation for this is going to be. Someone said that it could be like a 2-year, $10 million guaranteed, but $20 million over the course of the entire
Do it.
Right? I mean,
I agree. I agree.
At some point, we have to treat we can't rely that the Tennessee Titans just have bad luck no matter what. No matter what, the Tennessee Titans cannot sign a wide receiver because they've always sucked at finding a second wide receiver.
Oh, by the way, it isn't the same person making the decision. Like, if you want to talk about those two major decisions, I understand, Tim, to your point. I understand, and you kind of just said this, the human instinct to compare things that are similar. Like, I get that. That's how we work as people. But it's not the same person deciding to pull the trigger or not. Part of the reason John Robinson isn't here is because he made those decisions. I will say, however, to most of you fans listening, not necessarily you, Zach, but most fans listening, most fans were gagging for Jadeveon Clowney and were thirsty AF for Julio Jones. Like, they love the idea when they got them both. So if you loved it at the time, you can't come back later and be like, oh, that was a terrible decision. Like, well, no, it turned out to be a terrible decision. And you can be sort of jaded by that. But that was John Robinson and another coordinator and it was a different time of Titans football. You have to trust Rand Carthon now to make a different decision or the best decision, whatever it may be. And Jason makes the great point here. It just needs to be better than our current number 2. Yeah. And DeAndre Hopkins is definitely better than your number 2 wide receiver on this roster.
Large margin.
So if you can figure it out and you're close enough on the details, you make it work, you try it. But I also want everyone to acknowledge, like you just said, now before it happens, this is what we're risking, because I think there's just as much injury issue with DeAndre Hopkins as there was with Julio Jones. The guys missed 15
I think there's less.
I know you've made that point, and if you want to hear that point, go listen to that previous episode of the show.
Make your point, but you can't reference your point.
No, I'm going to move on. I'm just going to say he's missed a ton of time, and if you want to go listen to me explain why I was concerned about that X, Y, and Z, you made good points. I made good points. We all make good points. Okay, go listen to that. I don't think it's zero. I don't think the risk is zero. Like, there's never anything that's zero risk. So I just think we need to be honest with ourselves now that this is not the same player, but it's probably worth it. Let's see what the risk is, the cost is, and if it happens, accept the risk and see what kind of good he can create. And that's it. And then we move on. And I think that's all you can do as a fan right now. So he's better than their current number 2.
Yeah, he's better than the current number 2. He's the best option on the market. I mean, the next best guy is Jarvis Landry. It's slim pickings after that.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Really, I want to talk about the Patriots just real quick. They have a guy holding out, Lawrence Guy, so they won't need money to rework his contract. They have Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne, and I guess the idea is that, okay, one of those guys has to go. So technically you could have Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne come to this team, but that's not really moving the needle. It seems like Hopkins camp doesn't really want to go to the Patriots. They may not sign with the Titans today on Monday as we're recording this. They may not sign with them. But it doesn't really seem like the Patriots are top on their list. And why would they be? Mac Jones, Bill O'Brien. I mean, give me a break. You don't want to go back to that hellhole. You want to go to the guys that you respect.
Yeah, I mean,
that are a lot closer to being contenders in their division and playoff team. Like the DeAndre Hopkins going to, I know he doesn't care at the end of the day. It's about money, but they don't have a lot of money either. So
here's the bottom line. If he has a feeling about Mike Vrabel, a personal relationship, or Bill O'Brien, a personal relationship, of which he has both, and one of those is bad enough to not go, then that'll be it.
Yeah.
And right now, there's no reason why he flies to Nashville, does all the posting on Instagram. He doesn't do all of that if Vrabel was like a non-starter for him. So it's clearly that's not the case. It feels like there's a chance that all that other stuff, Mac Jones and the contract situation and Bill O'Brien and et cetera, like how tough that division is, let's be honest, right? Really good defensive teams in that division. Like it could very easily be like, there's a reason I'm slow playing you guys in New England.
Right.
Like,
I think the negotiations are in a good place based on the aloofness of that Bill Belichick has alluded to.
Stoney, I definitely had that clowny hog down my throat, guilty as charged. That's why you listen to the show, folks. Chime into the comments, rate, review, and subscribe. And folks, this is Sinkers and Kingston Group. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But go to Sinkers and remember the name of the Kingston Group. Okay, let's get into some names of Titans players that have gone under the radar, that are a little forgotten, that we think are going to be critical for this team to be successful in 2023. Again, shop at Sinkers and remember the name of the Kingston Group. So I have one name on offense. I tried to come up with names on offense because we've spent so much time talking about the offense. They get all the press on the socials and the clicks and the tweets and the likes. It's all the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs, and the offensive line has gotten a lot of talk as well. I have one name on offense that I think is going under the radar, that I thought had a really comfortable week of practice last week. So I'm going to throw that in there. And I want to see if you have the exact same one, because it sounds like you're in the same kind of range of names.
Okay, so who you got?
Aaron Brewer.
No, he's been talked about a lot. So I don't think he's very forgotten. He's been talked about in a hateful way, but he has been talked about a lot. And in fact, I need someone please, that has a press pass. Someone please. I don't know. I've asked this before. I don't know why nobody's done it. I've asked you and I've asked Easton to do it.
Okay.
Aaron Brewer's coming off the field. You need to tell him that tomorrow or the next media practice, whenever it is, and you need to tell him, hey, Aaron, I don't know if you know this or not, but there is a radio personality who claims that you are not 290 pounds or more. And he said that if you got on a scale in front of him before practice and you weigh 290 or more, he would donate $1,000 to the charity of your choice. We need to make this happen.
Oh my gosh. Is that
Stillman?
Is that Stillman? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It needs to happen. Someone needs to do this.
Okay. So first of all, where I thought you were going to go with this was going to be wildly unprofessional. This is only mildly unprofessional, but still unprofessional, but also potentially for a good cause.
Yes.
So there, I think you could probably finagle it. Not exactly the time or the place.
I am telling you. Well, first off, I think it should be the time or place to do it, because I think Stillman should be embarrassed. But I think, because he talks about it all the time. Whenever Aaron Brewer is brought up, that is the first words out of his mouth, that he is a tiny man and that he does not weigh 290. And he brings this up because he knows none of you guys have the balls.
It's not about the balls.
You
Come
think it's
on.
going to offend Aaron Brewer?
No. It's about having the right situation to sort of, because you have to really lay out the entire situation. You have to be like, no. Like, this is what's being said.
Yeah.
And it's for a good cause. So let me get, like, he just has to be willing in what is a very exhausting situation. Like, these players come off the field and almost all of them are trying to get past us as fast as possible to get into the locker room. Like, they're all trying to avoid, like, they're literally like doing this. Like, they're like trying to get past and like, oh, I'm going to hide behind TR Tart to get into the locker room. Okay. Like that's how they're doing it. So I have no problem. I have no problem saying that to him. It just has to be in the right setting. So if I can get a conversation with him, we can have a chat. I can do a quick interview, and then afterward, I could probably say, "Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question real fast? Would you be willing to do this?" I think I can probably arrange that. So
all right, get it done.
It's not about the balls. It's about having it's got to be the right setting.
I think you're overthinking it. I think it needs to be with all the microphones in the hand. Say, hey, what do you think about this blowhard?
Well, but I'm not trying to make it about me, though. That's the thing, is if you do that, what happens is you make it about you, and I'm not trying to make it about me. But let me go back to the reason we were having this discussion in the first place.
Either way, I don't think he's very under the radar.
So I would say this, though. I don't think I read or heard a single thing about him all week of practice last week. And me and somebody were sitting there on Thursday at the very end of the practice week and kind of looking at each other during a red zone drill. And we both looked at each other and we kind of just said, Aaron Brewer looks a lot more comfortable at center than he does at guard. And I'm not sure I heard anybody say anything about it all week last week. I didn't say anything about it last week. You didn't say anything about it last week.
Well, I mean, you didn't tell me that he was looking good at practice.
But it's one of those things that I hadn't it's not like that he was, it wasn't like markedly better or anything. He just looked comfortable. And we know what his problems are at guard. He can get overpowered at times. His size can be an issue. It's less so at center. And I think his move to center, the Titans are clearly signaling with the $4 million tender offer that they clearly believe in his ability to play there. I would guess that he is a step down from Ben Jones at the start of the season, and that maybe eventually grows into somebody that's better than Ben Jones. I assume that's their plan. So I think it's a pretty critical piece on an offensive line that is completely unproven. And we did not talk on this show in at least 4 episodes, 2 full weeks. We have not talked about Aaron Brewer at practice. And I was thinking through guys that, who could I bring up that we need to mention that's important? And then I started thinking about watching him. I was like, oh, okay. I think I actually saw a guy that was clearly more comfortable as a center than as a guard. And I guess that's a positive sign for Aaron Brewer in the offensive line.
I can see that. I mean, I could see that basically the media isn't wanting to eat their crow after bad mouthing everything surrounding Aaron Brewer all off season. So and also center's kind of a position that can get overlooked at times if you're not fumbling the snap. So I can see that. They're kind of under the radar.
Okay. All right. Who you got?
This doesn't feel like it should be under the radar, but it feels like he's not getting a lot of play or anything. And again, kind of like Aaron Brewer, he's a position of importance, of obvious importance, but nobody's really talking about Andre Dillard. And I don't understand if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's like, hello, left tackle is pretty important for this team. We should be getting weekly or daily updates when you guys go of how the left tackle position looks, because it's the most important position of need on this offensive line and for the quarterback to find success. And it's kind of like Aaron Brewer. It's kind of like everybody's like, well, we badmouthed this offensive line, and until they go out and put up 0 sack allowed performances in the regular season, we're just not going to give them any flowers.
So I think it's similar. Follow me here. I think it's similar to Titans fans being scared of signing DeAndre Hopkins because of Julio Jones, is that they're just scared that they've been burnt by the offensive line, like rotating door of offensive linemen for so many years, that they're scared to let themselves be optimistic about it. And I actually, honestly, he's very athletic, but I have a lot of questions about the power holding up against the best power edge rushers off the left side. Like, he didn't start as a first-round draft pick for a reason. It doesn't mean he's not going to be good. It doesn't mean Mike Vrabel can't and Haas can't develop him into something good. He certainly has the athleticism to be good. You also can't, like, the only thing, and Tim kind of mentions this, no news in OTAs and minicamp for offensive line is good news. Like, the only lineman I remember jotting notes down last week on were Jalen Duncan, because he got blown up twice. So, like, Dillard didn't have any bad plays, but you can't tell what's a good play without any pads on. So I think you're right to point him out, though. Like, we didn't talk a lot about him last week or the week before, and I think it's an even more critical position than center. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it just feels like he's the whole surrounding, I guess the whole narrative surrounding Andre Dillard is that, well, he kind of stinks because, he got benched didn't win his job back from a 7th-round rugby player. Let me say something. That converted rugby player is fucking amazing. Like,
yeah,
he's like elite level, damn good offensive lineman.
Yep.
But also, Andre Dillard only lost that job because he broke his hand or his arm. He didn't lose it because of, anything outside of injury. Did he win it back? No, but at that point, it was so far gone that there is no coming back from that.
I think, and I don't want to speak for all Titans fans, but this is just me. I think Daniel Brunskill is a stabilizing force at right guard. I think Peter Skoronski is going to be a plug-and-play 10-year player at left guard. I think Aaron Brewer is more comfortable at center than he is at guard. I think NPF has work to do, but has a lot of skills at right tackle. And I think Dillard has a lot of skills and some work to do at left tackle. And all that, to me, adds up to, I think they're significantly improved, but I need to see it before I believe it. And that's just my honest analysis of their starting offensive line.
See, I don't have to see it because Dennis Daly sucks so bad. Like, if you watch a full 16 games of Dennis Daly last year, I think you could safely say this offensive line is better. Like, that to me, like, that's just what I keep going back to when I look at win totals and this and that. And it's something I'm going to ask Mike this week. I'm going to kind of corner him like a wild animal and make him admit that this team is better than the team last year.
Like, I completely agree with you that they are better. My question is how much better.
But doesn't it, if you go back and look at Dennis Daly's performance, doesn't it just have to be like 3 sacks less better for it to make an impact on this team? And that is the point. Yeah, I mean that's not. I'm not asking you to answer it, but that's just the theory behind it is that Dennis Daly obviously got Ryan Tannehill injured, right? If that one play didn't exist, aren't we talking about a different Titans team last year?
Yeah, I could see the argument there. The argument. I think that the offensive line was largely a sieve for most of the year.
Yeah, listen, it's just we talked about it in 2021. Yeah, 2021, right? That was the historically bad defense year.
Yeah.
That the defense didn't have to be elite. It just had to be not the worst. The offensive line is the same situation.
Where would you like?
Oh, I
not based on
if it's in like, listen, if this offensive line was ranked 24th last year instead of the bottom of the barrel.
Okay, that's what I was
this team would have won like 2 more games.
So like, if hypothetically they're 31 or whatever, whatever.
Yeah, they were like 31 or 32 last year. If they're
not based on metrics, just like generally like they're like one of the worst 3 offensive lines in the league.
It is based on metrics too. But
yes,
as long as they're like, listen, if they would have been 27th or 28th, they still would have been like 1 game better than what they were last year. Like, that's how bad that offensive line was and prevented the offense from doing things. Yeah. And the offense was already hampered by Todd Downing.
If they go
we're on a totally different thing.
No, I know. If they go from 31 to 21, they can win the division. They can win the division.
To me, that's almost unrealistic.
Okay.
That's huge. That would be great. That'd be great for this team.
All right. Do you have another half a player that you told me about you wanted to talk about on offense?
We kind of talked about him, but I do think he's very important to this team, and that's Trevon Wesco. It doesn't feel like nobody's really talking about Trevon Wesco enough, and that's because he ain't fucking practicing, which is a bad thing for this team. Because if he's not your blocking tight end, that means you're taking a step down, theoretically, to Kevin Rader as your blocking tight end, who's not as good as a blocking tight end when you need him, which then hinders your offensive line. Or you have Chig or Josh Wiley who need to be out there catching passes and running routes in their blocking. It could also be a little bit of a good thing, but I feel like because then you can have Chig and Josh Wiley as kind of like you could do more stuff because if they're blocking well enough, then you could do more stuff out of the formation. But this is an important role for this Titans offense, and it has been. I don't know, God, Craig Stevens, maybe even further back than that.
3 or 4 coaching staffs.
Yeah, this is such an important role, and I feel like he's very under the radar. So while he's very important to the success of this team in a less of a way than like Chig Okonkwo is, but this is still a very important role that he's being a little under discussed.
I would agree, and what I would say about. And I would add one more layer to what you're saying, because I'm agreeing with everything you say, basically, that it's more important than we've been talking about. It's a pretty critical role that not just this coaching staff, but like every coaching staff in Titans history has valued. And they think they've found the next Craig Stevens in Wesco, which, again, all statistical data points to one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL last year. So I think what's interesting is it also changes the roster selection process if he is fully healthy and on the team, because they're not going to carry a fullback like they did a lot of times over the last 2 seasons. If they have him on the team and he's healthy, it gives them a chance to go more dynamic with a 4th tight end, maybe an extra lineman, possibly a 6th active receiver, whatever the number might be. Having him gives them more flexibility because you're just not going to carry a fullback then. Like, you don't need one at all. And so, and they had a fullback a lot last year on the roster and active. So I think there's a ripple effect, but I like that. Sinkers Beverages, of course, is who brings you this great show. Tomorrow, Zach and I, and 2 unlucky listeners, are headed up on a bus from Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville up to the Bourbon Trail. We are headed to Bardstown area. We're going to Wild Turkey. We're going to pick out the Russell Reserve Barrel Pick for Sinkers in 2023. They are an award-winning liquor store. Bluegrass, their sister store up in Hendersonville. So if you're in the north area, make sure you go check that out. But they were Nashville's best liquor store, and this is why they do stuff like this for you, the consumer. Go sign up for the in-crowd, of course, and we'll take bets on who and how often people will be vomiting on a Tuesday, a work day, which is really, really dangerous to start at 7:30 in the morning. Also, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. We love you very much. Thank you for all the great work that you've done in this city. Just remember the name, the Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Before you make any big decision about your house, make sure you give them a call. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Let's get to the defense, because I wrote down like 6 names on defense when I started this process out. And almost a lot of this is due to injury. So I want to be clear on that. But that's also why they're out of sight, out of mind from last year's team to some degree. Do you want me to just rattle them all off? You want to go one at a time? You want to alternate? How do you want to do this?
Let's alternate.
Okay, I'm going to start with Amani Hooker. I think Amani Hooker is the name I would start with. He missed 8 games last year. They were 3-6 with him. They were 4-4 without him. So do with that information what you will. But I think he is, because of depth, because they want their secondary to be versatile. I think when you pay him the amount of money they paid him, to say that you are a critical key piece of this defense moving forward, he is too important to not be on the field and healthy and rangy and making plays and doing the things they need him to do so that they can change their personnel scheme on the back end as much as possible. Amani Hooker's a guy that hasn't gotten a lot of talk, in my opinion. He was very stable until he got the contract, and then he missed a bunch of games. He has got to be healthy this year, and he's got to be out there in all 17. And I think he and Byard form one of the best safety duos in the league if they are both on the field at the same time.
Yeah, Andrew Adams did a really good job filling in for Amani Hooker, but he is also injured and probably further behind on his recovery, so he's not really an option. Because then you're talking about guys like Josh Kalu and these undrafted free agent safeties that are getting looks, and possibly Elijah Molden playing out of position, even though it may be a position that he's comfortable in. So I agree with you that Amani Hooker is not being talked enough. It's kind of like, to me, Amani Hooker is your defensive backfield version of Harold Landry. You know, he got paid, and then he wasn't really around for 2022 after he got paid. But he's obviously already at practice and a lot further along, and his position I assume is a little bit easier for him to get back in the groove of things because he's out there doing other things other than what Harold Landry's doing. So to me, he is a super important piece, and he is a guy that's not being talked about enough. And it's really odd. He's kind of like everybody else. The only time people want to talk about him is like, well, he just got paid, and now he's an overpaid safety. And
And I'll say this
wasn't
too.
even overpaid when he got the deal. Everybody talked about how great of a deal it was. It's
Right.
total opposite of what Harold Landry's discourse was.
I will say this. We were joking earlier about Brewer coming off the field and grabbing him. Imani Hooker has take every practice that I've been there. He has stopped to talk to a lot of people. And so I think he sees how Kevin Byard acts. Like he sees how Kevin Byard has put himself into this role. And I think he's more comfortable in that role, being a vocal leader of a defense. He's been around longer than everybody else, really, in that secondary for sure. And so I think he's very comfortable in being that player, but now he needs to be on the field every week. Like he's got to be there. I just think he's such an important piece. I'll package, I'm going to piggyback one right here real fast with Elijah Molden, because I think Molden is a really, really important piece.
But I feel like he's not flying under the radar.
No, I don't think he is because of the change in position. And because they've been playing him at safety and everywhere else, like people have talked about that. So that's why he's not like the first mention. But I do think they are training him to be the next safety when Kevin Byard is gone, like in 2 years or whatever it may be. I think they want Elijah Molden to be their safety long term.
I agree. Has everybody forgotten about Arden Key? Like, doesn't it seem like Arden Key is not getting enough talked about enough? Because, I talked about it a little bit with Mike last week in regards to Harold Landry. Harold Landry has always needed someone on the opposite side of him for him to be successful. Can Arden Key be that guy? I mean, you would think so. And, one of the questions that I'm kind of tossing around out there is Arden Key's penchant for availability going to outweigh what Bud Dupree was as a force multiplier? Because can he get more sacks? And because he's available, does that ease the load off Harold Landry, other than Bud Dupree gets 3 sacks or something like that? Like, does that availability matter to this team? And is it being talked about enough? The addition of Arden Key as the only free agent so far that is really guaranteed a second year on this team. Like, we don't talk about his contract enough, but the way that his contract is constructed, he's at least here for 2 more years. Everybody else can kind of be done with their deals after this year.
It's funny that you went with Andre Dillard and Arden Key, because I think Daniel Brunskill is the least talked about human being on the entire team. But I had a tough time looking at new free agents and not, because we did an entire 3 episodes on those guys when they signed.
But since then,
no, I agree.
Aziz Al-Shaair, I would never put on this because he's all anybody talks about and all, because he's great. But it seems like Arden Key is just kind of forgotten.
I think we did mention him a couple of times in terms of what he brings, this class brings to the table, which is a lot of personality and a lot of energy, which is Al-Shaair, which is Sean Murphy-Bunting, which is Arden Key. There's a lot of vocal. Arden Key is the most vocal of all of those guys on the practice field.
Really? See, wouldn't know that.
Absolutely. But they all are. They all have big personalities like Chris Harris. They're all sort of talking the whole time. Jeffrey Simmons, as I mentioned last week on the show, is more talkative now. They're all kind of in that mold. And I think Key, it's again, there's no way to see a guy make a play at that position. The offensive and defensive lines are so hard to see somebody stand out. Whereas when you watch one-on-ones and wide receivers and corner, you can see who won the battle every single play, and it's very difficult to see that stuff. But I wrote, I didn't write down any free agents because I thought we spent so much time on them. But you're right with Dillard and Key, since camp started, or practice or OTAs or mini camp, both of those guys have been fairly surface level conversations. But they're asking a lot of Key to play that Dupree role.
I look at it as, to me, I look at it as, when I was making my list, as guys that should be talked about more in the discussion when you're talking about the outlook of this team. I feel like these guys, and I feel like the guys you mentioned too, aren't really being talked about as their availability or their production is so key for this team to be successful. Because you mean when you're talking about being successful, depth chart guys, yes, they need to be good, but it's really hard for them to make an impact as long as these guys are staying healthy and doing their job. It's like, to me, an under the radar, I guess, talking point, which kind of falls into Forgotten Titans, and I mentioned him earlier today, is a healthy Danico Autry is so huge.
I got Danico Autry right there.
Like, it feels like nobody's talking about him, and that's why I say I don't understand why he's not being extended, and I feel like nobody's talking about him other than using him as an example of, well, Kevin Byard, you know, we know Danico Autry can miss practices. Why can't Kevin Byard miss practices? I feel like that's the only time we talk about Danico Autry. We don't talk about his particular impact on this defense since he has signed his contract. We never talk about that this year as an outlook. It's like everybody's written him off as an old man.
He does look a little older at practice. I will say that. Just I don't know if he's I think he grew out his beard a little bit, and he's got the hair grown out, so he just kind of looks a little bit more seasoned. Let's call it. He missed weeks 12 through 15 and week 17. He missed 5 games. The Titans went 0-5 in those games, and I think
in close games that a player of Danico Autry's caliber can make an impact in.
My question about Danico Autry is about where's the end? When is the cliff? And if is it a cliff, or is it like a slow decline? Is it like a little slope? Is it a bunny hill? Like what actually happens when he starts to trend that direction? He is one of the toughest dudes you will ever see on a football field, but he is the old man of the group for sure. And there's going to come a time where his game is not the same. And the question is, when is it? And how much of an impact does it have? Do they have people behind him? So I've got the top 2 names on my list were Amani Hooker and Danico Autry, because no one's talking about how important they are they have to be on the field for this team to win. They have to be on the field.
And I tell you another guy, and I know you probably got one more, but this will be my last one, and then I'll let you go. I think this is kind of the guy that I thought of when I came up with this topic, and that's Chance Campbell. And I think that while he may not start, you cannot rely on Monty Rice to fill the Zach Cunningham kind of board or role and stay healthy. And I think that you're talking about a player that was on the upswing last year before he got injured, who is a super athletic SEC level starting caliber inside linebacker that has good instincts in the run game. He doesn't have the play strength, but he's super athletic and smart and instinctual. And when you talk about playing fast, this is a guy that everybody's seemingly forgotten because of injury. And I think Chance Campbell is going to play an important role in this defense to where his presence can help the Titans either maintain a lead or get a stop at a crucial moment.
So I completely agree with Chance Campbell. I think Wyatt wrote about him.
He did actually today. I
think today.
Yeah. Well, of course, everybody's gonna think I got it from Jim Wyatt, but
clearly being talked about now, Zach.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't like. Does Harold Landry count as a guy that we're not talking enough about? Because
I think so. Like,
I don't think we're talking.
I think people are just not talking about this defense enough, and I know Mike wrote about that last week, but I don't think that people really are truly understanding. I do, but I don't think people do understand the true ceiling of this team this year. And I think they're seeing a 7-game win streak or losing streak last year.
Where none of these guys played.
Where none of these guys played, by the way. And they're seeing a Ryan Tannehill's back. They didn't do anything fancy with the wide receiver position. This defense has a chance to be really, really, really fucking good. And I know that's asking a lot, but there's a lot of key pieces that were banged up, injured, or unavailable throughout that whole season. This team is going to be a lot better than what people think. And I think these guys, especially, that's why most of our guys are on the defense, because I think defense is...
No one's talking about it. Yeah.
Nobody's talking about it.
So I think the conversation, and it's kind of like, to me, it's what should the conversation be? To me, it's like Hooker's more important than people realize. Danico Autry, everyone knows he's important, but like, when is the age thing going to affect him. To me, the conversation around Harold Landry that no one's having is that his ACL happened at a different time
Oh
than
my
all
gosh,
the
so
other
long ago.
than all the other ACLs that we've dealt with, whether it's Bud Dupree, Robert Woods, Caleb Farley, Dylan Radens. His ACL happened on September 1st, I believe. So the idea is when we say sometimes it takes a guy a year and halfway through the next season to get back to it. Well, normally that's a 12 to 13-month window. Well, we're almost to that 12-month window for Harold Landry. So the question is, does it shouldn't take him a half a season to get up to speed. It might take him 3 preseason weeks of practice and maybe like a game or two. But by like the middle of the first month, Harold Landry should be back to being at full speed. And so that would be 13 months. Like October 1 would be 13 months.
It takes roughly of players of his size at his position anywhere from 30 to 37 weeks to be fully recovered, right? Not like up to speed, but fully recovered.
Exactly.
And he is way beyond that. I mean, we're coming up on 52 weeks. So he's way beyond that.
Yep.
I agree with you because I think that people forget that it was back. It wasn't in like November he tore his ACL. It was September, and those couple months matter to his impact on the team and getting up to speed.
Yes.
The question for me surrounding Harold Landry is how much workload do they put on Harold Landry, which leads me to Rashad Weaver. And
I got Rashad Weaver written down right here.
We're not talking enough about everybody's focused on the inside linebacker depth or the lack thereof, even though they're not talking about Chance Campbell, even though that is good. That's a good third inside linebacking rotation to have. Nobody's talking about that they have a 3-headed monster plus Danico Autry, if you want to put him there, a 4-headed monster, where they may only keep 3 outside linebackers because Danico Autry can flex. So it's like nobody's talking about those 4 players, and they're all on your list, right? I mean, like, isn't that kind of crazy?
I've got Autry, Landry, and Weaver all written down, and I think, but they all have different questions. Like I need to see Weaver step into a more prominent role, develop more game, and be a bigger piece of the puzzle. Landry has to prove that he's overcome the injury fully. Danico Autry has to prove that he can kind of push off Father Time. Like they all have different questions about each other, and I think what we're doing, maybe not you, or me, but like the fan base, is they're saying for this team to have any chance to be any good at all and to hit that ceiling or to be optimistic about the season, you have to make assumptions about this group that they are going to be back to normal and up to speed and the strongest part of this team. And some of this stuff is you just have to assume that that's all happening. So we're just going to ignore it and out of sight, out of mind. Like we're going to ignore it. We're not going to talk about Derrick Henry because we don't need to, because we have to assume that he's great, because if he's not great, we're fucked. And I think that's the key with this defensive front is like, if Autry gets hurt and Landry's not back to health and Weaver doesn't develop and Arden Key doesn't hit, they're in trouble. But the odds are that like 3 of the 5 will hit, right?
Right.
So like if 3 of the 5 are back and healthy and good and have hit, then they're in good shape. I think you're probably right. People are talking about middle linebacker, but I don't feel like they're talking about it enough. It's like Monty Rice, Chance Campbell, that's fine. Okay.
Right.
But Al-Shaair is a free agent. Monty Rice can't stay healthy, and Chance Campbell is a second-year late-round pick. I have major concerns. People are obsessed with the offensive line, and they're obsessed with the receivers. I think middle linebacker is just as big a question mark as receiver is. Treylon Burks is better at his job than any linebacker is at theirs. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
So I think the weakest position on the roster is middle linebacker, in my opinion. And I think we don't know anything about these guys. Monty Rice, by the way, 47 tackles in the last 5 games last year. I don't know if that's good or bad. He was 4th on the team in tackles. And he's been back out at practice the last 2 days of minicamp last week. I think Monty Rice has to take a huge step forward, or Chance Campbell has to take a huge step forward. Otherwise, I have Jack Gibbons. I don't like, that's not an answer to me at middle linebacker. So I have major concerns about that. Maybe that is being talked about. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I have not. I am drowned out by the wide receiver offensive line talk that I don't hear enough middle linebacker talk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk on this defense there's a lot of meat left on the media bone, and maybe everybody's just saving it for the downtime of
So
this
right
team.
now.
Yeah, right now.
Stoney's right. Weaver is a perfect fit for where he currently is on the roster. That's exactly right. I love Weaver as the number 3 pass rusher to come in and give him some effort off the bench to spell Landry so you're not overworking the new knee, to spell Key when he's kind of working his way in. I think there's a chance they're all really good, but there's a lot of questions there. I mean, it's NFL football. There's questions on every single position. So I think that's basically. I had Hooker, Autry, Landry, Weaver, and Rice written down as my defensive guys. And this is to drive home the injury point that you're kind of making. Amani Hooker, Danico Autry, Elijah Molden, Harold Landry. That is 4 starting members of the defense, hypothetically, in week 1 last year. They missed 45 combined football games last year. I just want to drive that point home that if all of them are back, that is 3 full NFL seasons.
Yeah.
You are getting back onto the field, basically.
And that matters. Even
does.
if they're not the, Harold Landry or Danico Autry or Elijah Molden that they were in 2021, you know what? It matters that their presence is on the field because they're better than the alternatives.
Yes. Don't compare me to the Almighty. Compare me to the alternative. That is the line. Otherwise, Bourbon Trail tomorrow. Stay tuned to the socials at F-Words Pod, at Braden Gall, at 440 Sports, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group, of course. Sorry, Kingston Group, that you're involved in this. But we're gonna post some stuff tomorrow as we head up there. We got 2 listeners riding with us. We are gonna leave it pretty early in the morning. We are gonna come back later in the afternoon. God bless my wife for taking care of the kids. Do you imagine there's gonna be about 6 or 7 people, 3 from Sinkers, you and me, and then 2 listeners. Do we think anyone gets sick on the trip? And I mean from booze.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've already had my 1 throw up of the year. I only throw up once a year, and that's already happened for me. So I'm in the clear. I know I'm definitely not throwing up.
Was that at the Senior Bowl in Mobile?
No, that was I didn't get to throw up at the Senior Bowl. That was the draft.
Oh, that's right. The next morning?
Oh, yeah. I was in hell the next morning.
Also courtesy of Sinkers Beverages.
Yeah. That I didn't eat a lot that night, so that won't be the case here. So I've had mine once, so I'm good.
Oh, wow. Stoney says you totally threw up in Mobile.
I did throw up in Mobile. Yeah,
Drama.
I did throw up in Mobile. I forgot about that.
He's going to set a new PR this year.
So that would be it.
3 vomits.
That's 2. That's 2 vomits, and that's very uncommon.
The only thing that matters in my house is,
to be fair, I had to force a vomit for the draft because I was trying to get over it.
Okay. Oh, so it's a hangover, one of those hangover, like I need to feel better thing. Stoney says Friday night, the night we walked up on the funeral. I guess you'll know what that means.
But I don't throw up. I guess what I should say, I haven't thrown up in a long, long time the night or day of drinking. Now, maybe I do have to force myself to throw up the next day, but that's a little bit different.
I have to do it the night of to go to sleep. Otherwise, I'll be up all night and I can't go to sleep. So I'll have to do it to get it out because I'm just like the spins or whatever. But all that matters in my house is who has thrown up last, me or my wife. And as of right now, I am on an unprecedented run of success in my household because she was the last one who got sick. And that was like almost 2 years ago. So she was the last one that got sick almost 2 years ago, but I am still the winner because I was before that on New Year's Eve 2 years ago. So all that matters in my house is that she's the one who last got sick. Her brother's probably listening to this. He was there that night as well. And that's all that matters. It's been a long time for me. So I'm knock on wood. I'll be in game shape tomorrow. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I do think that Tim will fall asleep on the way back. No doubt in my mind.
I agree with that. Tim will fall asleep on the way back. No vomiting, hopefully. Really good meal. And then we'll show you some highlights of like what I'm fascinated to do is actually see how you go in and pick what does the liquor store do when they go up to a distillery and actually pick the one that they think is best for their customers. Like that's a pretty serious decision. So I can't wait to see how it all works, and we'll show you guys how it works and what's going to happen on Thursday. Tim says 100% he's fallen asleep. He's also a new dad, so
that's why I put that in there. It's not because
basically
new dad plus drinking will equal falling asleep.
You weren't calling a narcoleptic.
No.
It's fine. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday, and stay tuned to the socials for the visuals from tomorrow's trip. And Tim, we'll see you tomorrow, big guy. For Zach, I am Braden. For Sinkers and Kingston Group, thanks for supporting local business. We'll talk to you on Thursday. This has been a football show.